نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد أحبتي في الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسأل الله الكريم رب العرش العظيم أن يتولنا في الدنيا والآخرة. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, accepts our good and forgives our evil, protects us from kulli suwa makruh. May Allah, the Almighty, protect us all from the evil of ourselves and the evil of others. And may Allah bless the Muslims everywhere and protect the Muslims everywhere, preserve the Muslims everywhere, and bless us to be a source of guidance for mankind. And may Allah Azza wa Jal lift the harms and the difficulties and the famine and the genocide and the oppression and wickedness from our brothers, from the Uyghurs, and from our brothers and sisters in Philistine, and our brothers and sisters that in Lebanon, and wherever they're suffering, even if they are suffering with the prick of a needle. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant relief to our brothers and sisters in Sudan as well. And wherever they may be suffering and having even the slightest bit of hardship, may Allah grant them ease and success in both lives. Ahabati fillah, I wanted to offer up some advice as the question has come up a couple of times this week for some of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. What is some general advice? So general advice that I can offer, especially to those who are about to get out or have been newly released, that one of the critical things, and this is critical even for new Muslims in general, but one of the things is you have to know that unfortunately in many of the communities, they don't know how to interact with people who have been incarcerated, people who are former inmates. So there's a lot of people who are scared and they don't know, especially from many of the immigrant communities, but more so in communities that are reverts and the people who were born in America, especially in the American context or in the UK or in Canada or what have you, in Western countries, then they may have more experience in dealing with people who have reverted to Islam or what have you, and who are incarcerated. And this is first and foremost something that we have to keep in mind. So it requires even patience from the person, the brother or the sister who may have been incarcerated, that they themselves have to be patient with the communities, because they might not find the help they need. They might not find the love that they need and want and expect. And we don't want them to be turned away from Islam and turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, it's very important to remember that you are a Muslim, and you're a Muslim for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That even when you see the bad deeds and negative traps and negative things that you may encounter, that you want to keep your focus on the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and focus on Tawheed and worship. So increase your worship and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala often, and try to strive to do the various forms of worship and ibadah. As Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions, al-ibadatu kullu ma yuhibbuhu Allah wa yarda min a'mal al-zahir wa batin. He said ibadah, worship, is everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and is pleased with, from actions of the heart and external action. So that could be worship on the tongue, making dhikr on your tongue, fasting as a physical action, and just cleaning your heart, putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's also an action. And so another point, as one of the people commenting there, they commented about weed being halal. Weed is not halal, just to answer that. But what's very important in their question is that the person should strive their best to be in halal environments. So when people are released from being incarcerated and they come back into the society, if they don't find that the Muslims are strong and that the Muslims are co-opting them, they have to do their best to be in halal and good environments. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, "Al-mar'u ala dina khalilihi." A person is on the religion of his companions. So that means they need to get good, righteous companions. And when a Muslim brother or a Muslim sister is released from prison, they are in the most fragile of states, because perhaps they have a great desire and need to get married, number one. And perhaps they are in great need of trying to find a halal income. And perhaps they are in a great need to have good and righteous companionship. And that is critical. In order, they need people who are going to remind them of Allah. People who are going to bring them closer to Allah. People who are going to help them do that which is good and take a good path and to be patient, versus those who are, a part of the negative environment that they may have left before, or that is calling them and begging them to come back to. So very, very important to have good companions, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-maru ala dina khalilihi," a person is on the religion of their companion. So if you have negative, wicked companions that are calling you to get high, that are calling you to sell drugs, that are calling you to hurt people, or calling you to steal or whatever, then you will be influenced and you will be tempted to go back to that style of life and follow them. And so this type of wickedness is very, very important to be far away from. And that is critical and crucial for a person to have good, righteous companionship. And good, righteous companionship, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, is something which will that the good, righteous companionship, it will influence you, hopefully influence you in that which is good. Good, righteous companionship will influence you to that which is good. So a person who has good companionship, their good companionship will look out for them in their interest, and their best and their perfect interest is to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have to be closer to encouraged to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we mentioned, good companionship is also the environment in totality. That, for example, I know a lot of brothers and sisters, they struggle, they come back out and they end up going with their old friends who sell dope, who may not understand. Some of our brothers, I met some of the brothers who were in gangs. They were former various gangs, and they mentioned that they have a hard time. They want to leave that life, and they are being called back to it. And sometimes sometimes there is violence involved in the person if they are not participating in those gang-related activities. So this is also a scary thing and a dangerous thing. And I personally know someone who went to prison as a minor, who, because they started practicing Islam, their gang leader tried to assault them, and they took the gang leader's life. And famous words, as he related to me many times, he said to the person, because he shot out of fear, and he shot him dead in between the eyes. And he said that when he went out, he said to this man, as blood, akramakum Allah, I don't mean to be so graphic, but maybe for some of you, it's not as bad. But he said, I told you Allah was real. So I'll never forget that from a good companion of mine who had this experience and went to prison as a minor. And my point being is that some of the people have quite a difficult time leaving that lifestyle, because people want to pull them back in. Also, even more recently, a brother who was incarcerated mentioned to me that he, also was related. He's in a gang and he's trying to remove himself from that. And another brother, also incarcerated, who's a Muslim, also confided in me that he was asking the question, can he still gangbang and still be Muslim? And I said, absolutely not. You have to do everything possible to get out of that lifestyle. because that lifestyle is the opposite of Islam. It's going to call you to everything, and your allegiance will be to your gang and your colors and your race or whatever it is that unites you in your clique, instead of your unity based on Islam and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another very important thing for the people who are newly gaining their freedom is to take things step by step. Take things step by step, meaning don't rush in certain activities, because you might find that you might break. Another very important thing, aside from the environments and so forth, as we mentioned, and that you're focusing on your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is getting in the circles of dhikr, the circles where the people remember Allah, meaning places of knowledge. You need to sit with people who teach the religion, who have studied the religion and can call you to good and answer your questions and help give you direction and good advice. The Prophet ﷺ said, ad-din nasiha, the religion is sincere advice. And the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned, man yuridillahu bihi khayran yafaqqahu fi din. Whenever Allah wants good for a person, he gives them understanding of the religion. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fi kitabi al-kareem, Allah raises those people from amongst you who believe, and those who are given knowledge by levels. So the person who is gaining their freedom, they need to strive their best to be in those environments of good, because those environments of dhikr also, there is forgiveness. As the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that just being in those gatherings, especially if those gatherings are in the masjid, that the malaika, the angels, are there, and they're asking and seeking forgiveness from Allah for the persons that are attending the lectures and the classes that are trying to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that being the case, those are places of forgiveness. Those are places of remembrance. Those are places where it will strengthen your iman. And you want, even if you have Muslim brothers and sisters around you, you want to make sure they're the good caliber of people, meaning they are people who are not going to, yeah, they pray, but yet they spend a lot of time backbiting. Yet they pray, yet they pray, but they also smoke weed. Yet they pray and they do open sins. They pray, but they go to the club. They pray, but they're a dancer in the nightclub. This is not a good environment for the brothers nor the sisters, even if it was their Muslim brother or sister. Rather, they need to be on good companionship, righteous companionship. People are going to remind them of goodness and to do good deeds and to be patient and to go forward and do positive in their life. Another point that I want to mention, and maybe it'll be the last point, because I think we've kind of in general given some general nasiha, which things that I see that people may find difficult, is doing everything possible to have a halal rizq. You know, try to get around the believers, ask them where to go if you are in a place where you can't find a job or something like this, or in a good halal environment, and hopefully the communities can help. But if not, otherwise, just a nice honorable living where you are going to be able to avoid haram income, because that's so important to have, even if it's a humbling livelihood, that it's still lawful. You're still earning a lawful livelihood, and your wealth is, you know, has blessings in it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way. Those are just a few pieces of advice I can think of right offhand. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su wa makruh, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Aceh, it's the most Islamic province and have autonomy to practice Sharia law in Indonesia, and we all agree if weed is halal. Okay, that sounds great for as a perspective, I guess, but how in the world can you say an intoxicant is halal, especially when the evidence is overwhelming? So that's a very dangerous view. And especially if people believe that that which is an intoxicant is halal, then this could easily be what is known as istihlal, making the halal haram and the haram halal. And I can't imagine. I know a lot of mashayikh in Indonesia that some of them, we were in some of the same classes together in Medina, and I don't believe that they hold that view. And Allah knows best. So I don't know what's going on in Aceh. I've heard of Aceh. I know it's a famous province. I think Abu Sayyaf is maybe popular there. I don't know, but I know they are in some of the islands. But ala kulli hal, it's impermissible. I don't know anybody, no one from Ahl Ilm that I know of, that I've ever heard of, says that. And just from the asl of the mas'ala is that it is an intoxicant. I used to use that. I know that substance pretty well from those days prior to my Islam, and it is an intoxicant. And I know they've changed and they've modified, but it still gets people high. That's why they do it. They relax and they get high. How to deal with revert who's spreading bid'ah to new Muslims. He has been told gently with proofs that he is following misguidance. So you deal with a revert who's spreading misguidance the same way you deal with a non-revert who's spreading misguidance. And you can advise them. You can, if it is under a situation where it becomes mashru', legislated, where there's wisdom and there's a sharia maqsad, you can make hajr of them if that is something which will be of benefit to them. If it's not going to be the benefit of them or benefit to you and being protected from their harm, you can also warn against them, and advise people about the creed or dangerous things that this individual is spreading. So that's what's very important, and that's the whole reason, or one of the core reasons why Ahl Sunnah throughout history warned against the people of innovation and desires, because of the harm that it causes to the Muslim community and spreading wickedness. And it's a distortion of what Allah said and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said and practiced. And it also harms the individual practicing it. Now, so it's very important to deal with them in that respect. If it is someone who's a new Muslim and they don't know, well, you tell them. And as you said, you've been talking to them. Also, what does that mean? You've been talking to them. You talked to them for 1 week. You talked to them for 1 year. I don't know what that means. And I don't know what's beneficial for your situation. Maybe the person is a new Muslim, and if you make hajr of them, they will leave Islam, or it will be something really a greater wickedness. So you have to look at the masalih and the mafasid, the harms and the benefits when dealing with these types of issues. If there's a greater benefit or a greater harm in practicing hajr or whatever it is with that particular individual. Naam. So you have to look at the masalih and the mafasid. عندك دلائل النبوية النبوة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم بلغة إنجليزية. I'm not sure if you're asking me if I have the book. Do I have the book? I don't. If that's what you're asking, I'm not sure. But anyway, ala kulli hal, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su' wa makruh, bless us with ikhlas, with abad, and bless us all to be sources of good, and protect us from the evil of ourselves and the evil of others. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If there are no questions, then we will retire for the night and say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.